Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Thursday, August 29th, and it is the best day of the year because I have two words in the English language that when you put them together, send chills down your spine and make you euphoric and happy. Football season is upon us, Chuck.
Football. I love football.
Football season is officially here with the full slate of college football coming this weekend, starting tonight. I believe the first game tonight is Rutgers. Don't care about that. But it is football. We have TNL tonight. High school football season here in Texas starts off tonight, and then NFL season next week. So, as is usual with the start of the college football season, we are going to make some predictions today. We're going to talk a lot about UTSA football. Also, I would just like to pat myself on the back. Chuck reminded me yesterday I had Texas.
You did.
I had Texas in the playoff last year, and it was only a 14 playoff instead of a 12. So,
well
congratulations
done.
to me. They got destroyed, or they got.
Doesn't matter. They were there.
They got beat, but it didn't matter after that. I'll still take the win.
Bold prediction in August to be able to make that call. Well done.
I will have another bold prediction for everybody today as well, and it involves the Alabama Crimson Tide. We're going to make a lot of predictions today, though. Chuck and I are going to give you our 12-team playoff. We're going to talk a lot about UTSA's season and predict their upcoming record. Plus, we'll talk Texas State. We'll talk Longhorns. We'll talk Aggies. We got it all coming up because 12-team football playoff, there's going to be a lot of teams that make it. There's going to be a lot of teams that still get snubbed. It will give us even more fodder to talk about come December.
By design.
All right, well, let's start with trivia. I want to go UTSA trivia because obviously we are in San Antonio, so I want to put that up here a little bit. So UTSA trivia. UTSA going into their 14th year of football. What was their record in the inaugural 2011 season? So this will be their 14th year of football. What was their record in the inaugural 2011 season? Chuck, do you have something in mind?
I do.
Okay.
But I probably am wrong.
Your memory sometimes escapes you. Do you remember this one well?
More often than not. No, I don't remember that far back. Again, Matthew, I have a hard time predicting what I had for lunch or what I'm going to have for lunch most days. So what happened in UTSA's inaugural season 14 years ago, hopefully I'm in the sphere.
I can tell you pretty much what you'll have for lunch. It's either Zito's, it's Ding Hao, or it's Jimmy John's.
Not today.
Sometimes it's Popeyes.
Not today.
Not today. Today it's going to be different because I won't be around any of those places this afternoon at lunch.
Every time Chuck leaves for dinner, he's like, I'm going to go out and get something. Do you want anything? I'm like, no, I'm okay. He always comes back with Ding Hao. That's
because, my go-to place forever and when I have time was, take a guess.
Zito's?
No. They make salads.
Oh, Salata?
No. Well, that's
the
a
other
good one
come
now. Yes, Jason's Deli. That was like, I'd eat there 3-4 times a week. In fact, one of the guys there that I know really well just texted me the other day. He's like, "Hey, we kind of miss you." I was like, "Wow, really? That's cool." That's like, I can't get down 410 between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock without it taking me an hour to get there and back.
That's fair. Fair enough. I know you always used to go there with Jack.
Yes,
love it. That was your guys'
Still love it.
That was your guys' date spot.
That's fair too.
You guys worked together for that long,
yes.
So you guys have a little spot now.
Yes.
All right, so let's get to UTSA. We'll go back to the trivia question here in a little bit. Can UTSA make the expanded playoff is the main question we want to answer here today, mainly because this is the first year that group of 5 teams have a tangible chance to make the playoff. Obviously, Cincinnati made it a couple of years ago, and they got destroyed, but they had to go basically 24-0 over 2 seasons to get in. That's no longer the case. You can probably get in with a loss as a group of 5 team. You don't have to go perfect. Liberty obviously was perfect last year, would have made the college football playoff. We saw how their game against Oregon went when they went up against Bo Nix, my guy, in Oregon.
Wow, that was quick.
I know. That was only 5 minutes in.
Actually, less than.
So going into this year, obviously, group of 5 teams have a chance. I want to talk about Jeff Traylor, and he's talked a lot about starting off hot because in the last 2 seasons, they've gone 4-5 in September. If you go 2-3, or if you go 2-2 in September this year, you're probably not going to get in, especially with the teams you're playing in September.
There's no way they get in if they have 2 losses.
Exactly. So how important is it, and you just talked about it a little bit right there, is it for them to get off to a hot start against Kennesaw, Texas State, Texas?
Well, I mean, we think they're good, right? Now they get a chance to show us how good they are right off the bat. So without looking past Kennesaw, because I know they're not, this is going to get pretty hot in here pretty darn quick, right? Texas State, we talked about this before we even came out here, right? Seems to be everybody's darling or dark horse, whatever you want to say, right? That's going to be a pit-like atmosphere in San Marcos for that ball game. And then to turn around and then have to go back on the road and play number 4 Texas the next week. I think if we're talking about UTSA, if we're skipping ahead, getting to the final 12, they've got to run the table and they've got to be super competitive against Texas. They have to be. Because the default, with these people that are choosing these final 12 is going to be SEC team 2, 3, 4, and probably 5.
Well, Jeff said it the other day. They have no chance. They have no mulligans this year. Like, they used to have maybe a mess up. They lost to Army last year at a conference, and that didn't disrupt their entire season. They still ended up going 9-4, almost making the conference championship game, except for that loss to Tulane when Frank obviously hurt his shoulder. This year they have no mulligans, and they're probably going to have to win sexy. They're probably going to have to destroy Kennesaw State. You're probably going to have to win by 35 points. The spread's 25. You're going to have to pass that. When you beat Houston Christian at the end of this month, I have no doubt they're going to win that game. How much do you win by? Do you win sexy? When you go to East Carolina, a bad AAC conference school, are you going to win that game? Are you going to win big? When you go to Tulsa, when you go to Tulsa, when Temple comes, are you going to win those games in a sexy, nice, big way and prove that you're one of the best teams? Or are you going to win close, which UTSA wins, but they tend to win close. So the wins that are 10 or less aren't going to be that sexy win for the committee.
I agree. But, this team is really, really deep, and they've got some studs. And I know we're going to dive into them a little bit more here in just a second, but they can do this. Are they going to be able to not have let's say they go and knock off Kennesaw, they beat Texas State, and then they're really, really good against Texas, but they don't win. They're starting to feel themselves. It's like, okay, they start maybe winning a couple games on the road early past the first 3 games. Is there a trap game somewhere on that schedule that, you just, to be able to focus and play championship level football, you've got to do it every single week. You have to meet every challenge, and you really have to, the cliche about taking them one game at a time, that's so hard to do when you're dealing with injuries and, looking ahead. Where are the bugaboos on the schedule? It's easy to look past some of these teams. Maybe it's easier to get your team's attention because they've been so good at home, and that if you're going to slip up, it could be on the road. How are they going to find that extra gear that they haven't been able to as a program? Well, they've done a lot of winning, but you're talking about being in a championship tournament, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to play championship caliber football, or if you want to play championship tournament football at the end of the year, you have to play championship caliber football each and every single week. And the focus with teenagers and, young 20-year-olds, this is the challenge. So if they can pull it off, we'll be the first ones to salute them to do it. And they can do it. And with this coaching staff and with everything they've got in place, it's just, can you do it every week with those challenges?
I think Jeff, in his time here over the last 3 years, is 23-3 or 24-3 in conference games. He's phenomenal when it comes to conference wins and making sure that those are the most important games on your schedule. It's going to be an adjustment, I think, for him, for the rest of, and it has been an adjustment for him and the rest of the coaching staff, the rest of the players, to get into the mindset that the out-of-conference games are now just as important if you want to accomplish your main goal. And when I talked to him at AAC Media Day, he brought up the playoff. I didn't even bring up the playoff. They know that the playoff is tangible, is within their grasp. They had at the AAC Media Day, they had the CFP trophy for the first time. Like, that is an acquirable asset and like an acquirable goal, a reachable goal for them. And for them to know it, for them to bring it up, I think there's even more pressure on this program, but also especially on those early games. You have 5 games in either August or September, besides Kennesaw, obviously, in August. You need to go 4-1 in those games.
But that's cool, right? I mean, that this program has evolved to the point where they can put this on the wall and nobody's going, say what?
They have the 6th best odds to make the playoff for a group of 5 schools.
So to put that on the board, good for them. And it's cool that they've given themselves something to shoot for right as we get ready to start the season. And the better thing about all this is if there's a slip up, if there's a trip up, especially early on in the season, well, the next goal is to win the conference championship. Again, at the root of this, the most important thing is we want to go win a conference title again.
Yep. There's a lot of questions surrounding UTSA coming into this. One of which is something we've been asking since the bowl game last year is how is this team going to go into the Frank Harris, Rashad Wisdom post era? Obviously, Frank's been here for so long. He's still around the team every day, it seems like. Rashad now doing great things on the Buccaneers practice squad, which was announced yesterday. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to Joshua Cephas, all the other UTSA guys that have made rosters, all the other San Antonio guys that have made rosters. But how does this team go into the post-Frank and Rashad era?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they do it, right? Because I think there's still a lot of questions that we probably have that I don't think the team necessarily does, right? I mean, we saw with our own eyes how they do this when they vote their own teammates those single-digit numbers. And so I would believe that those are going to be the guys that lead them out of this in terms of, filling the vacuum or the void that was left by Frank and Rashad. But it's the system is set up for these things to evolve and, have somebody come in and fill the void. So I think we've put a little too much on that at this point, but maybe we'll see.
I think when you have the culture, when you have the 2-0 triangle of toughness, when you have the culture pillars that Jeff does and all of what he has built over the last 5 years, even though Rashad and Frank were great vessels to get that message out, the message is still the same. It's still the 2-0 triangle of toughness. The pillars are all still the same. It's still the same culture. You just had great mouthpieces for it on both offense and defense. And now you still have those there as well. Jamal Ligon is fantastic. He's a good leader. He's a quiet leader. They just don't have those vocal leaders as they did last time. JT Clark, great leader. Oscar Cardenas, great leader. Mekhi Hart, back and better than ever, great leader. He's coming off an injury as well. You still have those guys on this roster. It's just not those brand names that we've seen, the Frank Harris, the Rashad Wisdom, the Joshua Cephas, all those guys.
It usually, as you know, is going to come from the quarterback room, more than likely. And I think they're in pretty good shape there. There's some selfless guys there. And, again, that's the beauty of where we sit here today, right? There's so many things that we don't know, but this book is going to get written week by week, chapter by chapter, and at the end, we'll see how it all plays out.
And as you mentioned the quarterbacks, and two quarterbacks have single-digit numbers. Owen McCown has a 2. Eddie Lee Marburg has a 9. That's voted on by the players, obviously, to get single-digit numbers, who they believe in the most, who they think deserves and represents the 2-0 triangle of toughness culture the best. Who's going to be the starting quarterback is another question we don't know. We're not going to find out from Jeff until they run out against Kennesaw on Saturday. So who do you think deserves the chance, and who do you think will be the starting quarterback when they run out against Kennesaw State?
I really don't know that I could answer this question fairly because, we're not at the practices every single day. We're not watching every single snap. I met Eddie Lee a couple times and seems like a really nice guy, and I've never met Owen, but they've both proven that they can move the football, right? We do know that. And, we've spitballed this too. If you had to pick or who you think that they're going to go with, well, then the default is who got voted the lesser number.
Yeah, technically the lower number, yeah.
Right, the lower number, not lesser. Yes. So, Owen, but, I think early on we'll take Jeff at his word, and he said all along, I'm going to play probably more than one guy at that position early on in the season.
See, at AAC Media Day, he told me something different. He told me playing two quarterback breeds mistrust or lack of confidence in the other. So I don't think he's going to play two. I think he's going to play one, and I think it's going to be Owen for a couple of reasons. One, he was voted the lower number by his teammates. I mean, being a number two as a redshirt sophomore now is no small feat. And you have the trust of your teammates. You have the trust of more teammates in that case, since Eddie Lee's a 9 and Owen's a 2, that shows that you have the command and the leadership of this team. Another thing just is, and it could be nothing and it could be something, we saw at the luncheon that you hosted, wonderfully, by the way.
You're very kind, thank you. It was Emmett and Jeff.
Yeah, Emmett and Jeff, and then and Chuck Miketinac. But we saw at the luncheon, Owen was up front with the bigwigs. He was up front with Peter Sakai and with a lot of the different San Antonio leaders that have a big say in this team and what happens to the future of this team. Eddie Lee was a couple rows back. Could it mean something? Could it mean nothing? I don't know. But you look and if you read all the tea leaves, you see that Owen was the quarterback of the team when they won their first bowl game ever. You look and see how they've practiced, how they've talked about it. I think Owen's going to end up being the quarterback of this team, and I don't think that it's going to be a quarterback by committee. I think it's going to be, you're the guy, go win us some football games.
I think, though, the first game, it'll be interesting again to see how they pair this, but Kennesaw State is going to give, you would think, multiple players an opportunity to see the field. Jeff Traylor has said 70 or 80 guys are going to play in this football game coming up in their opener. So, all the writing on the wall says Owen. And I think, if we're being fair, if you think that, Jeff Traylor knows how to coach, his offensive coaches know how to coach, the defensive coaches know how to do their thing. They see, and I don't think there's usually any surprises to anybody on the team when these things always play out. And I think if you ask whoever ends up being the backup quarterback too, they know who's earned the job and who hasn't too, because they chart every pass, every play, and at the end of the day, you add it all up, and it is what it is.
Bob?
Hey, in the comment section, there's a ton of love for your tie today.
Oh, thank you.
People are
Thank
loving
you.
the tie.
Tons of love.
And we probably should enforce some kind of a dress code for the podcast.
What do you mean?
Nothing. And then there's also some hate in the comments as well.
Okay. Well, we welcome the
User
hate.
in Oklahoma says UTSA in the playoffs. Put that pipe down.
They have the 6th best odds to make the playoff, so I don't know what pipe you're looking at, but they do have the 6th best odds to make the playoff. I was going to go over that here in a second. It's Boise State, Liberty, Memphis, Texas State, Tulane, and then UTSA. So literally 3 teams from the AAC are all in the top 6, and a group of 5 team has to make the playoff. Like, it's not, will a group of 5 team make the playoff? A group of 5 team is going to make the playoff. Will it be UTSA? Is a whole nother question.
Look, we welcome the hate. I mean, you're doing this early in the year, trying to predict what's going to happen 3-4 months from now. Again, we'll go back to my comments about I can't even predict what I'm having for lunch today, much less what's going to happen 4 months from now.
Salata.
We love it when Matt mixes it up with the commenters. It's great.
It's true. Like, UTSA has a tangible chance. Like, if you told me UTSA made the playoff, that wouldn't be weird. Like, that's not picking something completely off the board. If you said Boise State made the playoff, that wouldn't be something that's completely off the board because they're the favorite to make the playoff with the group of 5 teams. That being said, the UTSA, you have their schedule in front of you. UTSA's win total right now is 8.5. Excuse me.
That's what Vegas has.
That's
right?
what Vegas has. 8.5. Are you taking over or under 8.5?
I think that's an easy one, right?
I think that's easy.
Yeah.
But we said that last year with the Spurs, though, so I wouldn't be, be a little careful.
Apples and oranges here, though.
Yeah, no. I think that it's going to come down to a couple of games. Texas, if they make the playoff and if they surpass the win total, is going to come down to a couple of games. You can chalk up a loss to Texas. That's just, they're going to lose to Texas, probably. I hope they win, but they're probably going to lose in RFK. Are they going to beat Texas State? That's going to be a question mark, especially because Texas State's win total is also 8.5. A lot of people are picking Texas State to make the college football playoff, including Action Network's Brett McMurphy coming in as the number 12 team.
Wow.
Yeah, he picked them to make the college football playoff. So Are they going to beat Texas State? That's a question. The rest of their schedule is pretty simple. You get Memphis at home. That might be a look-ahead spot against Tulsa before that. You get your buys in the right place. Is Army, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder against Army in the last game of the season because Army beat them last year. You play the bottom few teams in this conference at Rice. You're versus North Texas, which is always a close game between these two teams.
But at least that one's at home.
Exactly. And then you get versus Temple, who's the worst team in this conference. Florida Atlantic might be a touchy game, but that's at home too. I think their schedule lines up in a way where they can go 11-1, not easily, but that's the ceiling. But I think the floor for this team is 9-3 in the regular season.
I couldn't said it any better than myself. You're right. I think, if you were to say, okay, maybe the Texas State game's a toss-up on the road. It's going to be a packed house in San Marcos. This is their Super Bowl, especially, this early on in the season. And given, the superiority UTSA has had over them historically, there's another trip-up game in there, and they still win 9 games. I'm with you.
If you lose to Memphis, you lose to Texas, and you lose to Texas State, you're 9-3. And you still might make the the AAC championship game. So I think that over 8.5 is pretty clear. I wanted to ask you, Chuck, Texas State is the darling right now. Texas State has been
who'd have ever thought
picked by a
Way
lot
to
of
go,
people
GJ.
out of the Sun Belt. Why? What is it about GJ Kinney and this Texas State team?
Because GJ has been a master, and I mean a master, at coming in late, building a program through a portal, finding guys that fit what he wants to do, build culture, build a team that believes in the culture, and then go out and X's and O you to death on Saturday afternoon too. It's been phenomenal. And to see him, what he did at UIW was unreal. He never thought that what Eric Morris did could be taken to another level. And then to do it again at Texas State, again, get there late. So now he's got a year under his belt. How good is it going to look in year 2? That's why they're the darlings.
Yeah, I mean, and
they got good players, but he brought in the good players.
To OnlyFans 47 or whatever his name was, Texas State has better odds to make the college football playoff than UTSA does. They're plus 1,100, 11-1 to make the college football playoff. So if you think we're putting our pipe in our mouths because of UTSA, Texas State has better odds to make the college football playoff than UTSA does. So over under 8.5 wins for Texas State this year. They play, I mean, you can chalk up a loss when they play Arizona State, obviously, but against everybody else, how do you think that fares out?
Again, I would take the over on that. And, again, I don't know what their depth is as we sit here today. Like, I like UTSA's depth a lot more than I like Texas State's just on the surface, but I'll let you know after you watch a couple ball games to see what we got.
I'll let you know if I reserve the chance to revisit all this after week 2.
Or after week 3, yes. We have a little clearer picture, or maybe a little more paint in which to paint the picture.
Speaking of the Longhorns, which is week 3, let's talk about the Longhorns and the Aggies a little bit. The Longhorns are one of the best teams in the country, obviously. They're 4th ranked in the country. They come to the season with the second best odds to win the SEC in their first year. They're minus 230 to make the playoffs. So I think that equates out to like a 65% chance, if my math is correct on those betting odds, to make the college football playoff. And then their 4th best odds to win the national championship. Over-under on the win total is 10.5. Are people too high on the Longhorns this year?
This is a hard one for me to figure out, right? Because last year I didn't want to give Texas any credit this time of year because my thought was it's going to be a baton death march for them once they get to conference because everybody's going to want to send them home with their last loss that they ever played against that school that they were teeing it up against that day. And they handled that unbelievably well last year. Won some close games, but you still won them, right? Knowing that you were going to get everybody's best shot every single week. Well, that's kind of the way I feel about going into the SEC, right? I mean, yes, they're good. Yes, they're deep. They're really good at quarterback, right? They've lost a lot, but they're still really, really good because of how much depth they do have. But it's these games in the SEC. It's the road games at Mississippi State. It's the road games at South Carolina where there's, 90 to 100,000 people. You're still walking into a pit atmosphere every single week.
At
and so,
Arkansas.
they're going to get, same thing, right? old rivalries renewed. So you get all of that, and to think that Texas could win double digits 2 years in a row with this, I mean, if they do, man, hats off to them. This program is making moves like, that ascent that Alabama was making, because if they can do this on a schedule this difficult 2 years in a row with this newness of the SEC and what a tough league that is, top to bottom. There are no off weeks. I don't care what anybody says. Hats off to them. I don't think they win 10 games this year.
Their schedule is in their favor. 5 of their first 7 games are at home. The only road games you have, true road game you have in their first 7 games is at Michigan. And Michigan is not what they were last year. You lose Jim Harbaugh. You lose, I think it's 13 starters. You come in with Sharon Moore. I mean, there's this giant cloud hanging over Michigan right now. I don't know what Michigan is going to be, frankly. And I think they go into the Oklahoma game, into the Red River rivalry, 5-0, and I think they beat Oklahoma. They go 6-0. I think they lose to Georgia after that. That's where they trip up, because historically they're really bad after the Red River rivalry,
it's gotten us all,
which I can't say. They tend to be pretty bad after that game. So I would guess that they're going to go. They literally are. They're home to Colorado State. That's a win. They're away to Michigan. I think that's a win. You're home to UTSA. Home to University of Louisiana Monroe. You're home to Mississippi State, and then you're in a neutral site game against Oklahoma. That's 6-0, and then you're at home against Georgia. Like, you have everything lining up for you to go 7-0 to start off. They might trip up in one of those games, because that's the Texas way right now, but I think they can very easily be 10-1 going into the Texas A&M game to close out the season and already have their playoff spot wrapped up.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to debate you. Again, we're spitballing this anyway.
Right.
It's just, that, again, every single week sounds like a fist fight to me.
But if you go 10-2, you're going to make the playoff from the SEC.
True that.
So if you go 10-2, let's say they lose to A&M and they lose to Georgia, they're still going to make the playoff. Like, that's. If you don't make the championship game, but then if you lose the championship game and you go 10-3 instead of 10-2, does that hurt you or does that help you? It's like,
right.
I don't know, because I think that Texas A&M game is going to be for A&M to make the playoff. I think that they're going to be pretty high up there, maybe 9-2 at that point, 8-3 at that point, and they need that win against Texas to add to their resume to try and get in. So,
I think they will need it if they want to get in.
So speaking of the Aggies, they have the 14th best odds to win the national championship. They're plus 220 to make the playoff, so definitely not a shoe-in by any means. 6th best odds to win the SEC, and their over-under is 8.5 on their win totals. Where do they end up?
I think they win more than 8.5. They're a fascinating program to kind of watch from afar, right, or read about from afar, because I know that Elko has come in here and kicked a lot of keisters. There were a lot of kids puking on the practice field, and spring football was no walk in the park. I think all this team or this program needed is a little more focus. I think culturally they already know what it's like to play in the SEC week in and week out. There's a lot of variables in play, but I think, if I'm a betting man, and I'm not, I would definitely take the over on the Aggies.
I think the Aggies over-under might come down to that Texas game. And if Texas has already sewn up their playoff spot and doesn't have a lot to play for, I think they'll still be into that game, obviously, because it's a rivalry renewed. They played every year for like 97 years or whatever, 111 years, whatever the hell it was. I think that'll still be a hell of a game, but that could come down to they're going 8-3 at the end of the season. They're going into the Texas game needing one more win to try and get into the playoff.
So much the better. Hopefully that game means that, they're both going in. That's what the real hope would be. Then imagine what imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like in College Station that weekend anyway.
Before we get to our college football playoff predictions, let's answer our trivia question. So the UTSA Roadrunners are going to their 14th year of football. What was their record in the inaugural season of 2011?
Shame on me, because at least you gave me a heads up with what the trivia question was going to be, and I should have looked it up, but of course I was too lazy to do it. I'll say 5-6.
Close, 4-6.
Okay.
4-6 is the
I
correct
thought,
answer.
well, that was way more than anybody thought they were going
Well,
to do.
I believe they went 8-4 the following year. So they stepped it up the following year. Obviously,
Hats off
that
to
was
Larry Coker, man. Should be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Make it so.
fun fact. I hated UTSA for a long time because I have a good story. Because I was playing junior college ball, and I got a scholarship offer from Larry Coker the year that they went like 1-11. It was like they were really bad, like 2-10, something like that. They lost all their conference games, and so I hadn't made a decision yet. And Larry Coker and his entire staff get fired, and then they pull the offer. So I was like, "Screw UTSA! I don't want to talk about them ever again. They're the worst." Obviously, I don't love UTSA, but I cover them now, so it's like it's a little bit different.
It's
but
hard
I was
to,
like, dang it.
you know, it's, again, I don't have a story like that, but, you know, it's not like these guys are the Yankees. You know, it's only, and even I'm starting to soften on them. I mean, my hate for any team with a logo is starting to lessen
All right, Chuck.
over time.
Let's get to our predictions here for the 12-team inaugural college football 12-team playoff. Pull out the list.
Notes.
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
No, you go, because I actually think you spent more time on this than I did.
I-
In fact, I know that's the case.
I've spent a lot of time on college football.
Sorry.
Stop buying what?
I don't know.
All right, so I kind of went by conference.
Okay.
I have 4 SEC teams. I have 2 ACC. I have 2 Big 12. I have 1 Big 10, and then 1 Group of 5. Oregon is going to be the best team in the country. Their schedule lines up for it. They don't have very many tough road games, especially when it comes to the Big 10, which is their new conference that they're in. Dillon Gabriel, if he can stay healthy, which is going to be the asterisk on this. If Dillon Gabriel can stay healthy, then they're going to win 11, 12 games. They're going to be the number 1 seed. They're going to make the playoff. I think they're going to win the Big 10. Clemson, I have them making it over Florida State and Louisville. Florida State obviously already lost to Georgia Tech, so we have the knowledge of that. So I think Clemson actually might win this week 1 against Georgia. I'm not convinced that Clemson won't win that game. I'm very high on Clemson this year. Georgia, I have at number 3 winning the SEC. Oklahoma State is going to win the Big 12. I really waffled on the Big 12. I really don't know what to think of that conference with Utah in there now, and with Kansas State taking a step back in recent years. I just really don't know what to think of the Big 12.
Kansas,
but I'm gonna
there's see some people spitballing Kansas too, so
I mean,
it's wide open, it would appear.
I mean, Arizona State could win it too. So let's just actually their win total is like 4.5. I'm really, really sad about Oklahoma State. All right, Texas I have at number 5. So those top 4 teams: Oregon, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma State, going to get the buys. Texas going to be number 5. I have Texas playing Liberty. Liberty is going to be my Group of 5 school, so it'll be Texas Liberty in the first round. I have Ohio State making it out of the Big 10. Ohio State will then play USC. I have also making it out of the Big 10. USC's schedule, it lines up for them to have a really good year. It's obviously going to be interesting how they respond from losing a lot of guys like Caleb Williams, but USC's schedule is phenomenal. I have confidence in them. Then I have Utah playing Miami. Utah making it out of the Big 12, obviously. Miami making it out of the ACC. That's the other AAC team. And then I have Ole Miss facing A&M. I think A&M could go 10-2, make the playoff. I love Ole Miss this year. If you heard what Nick Saban said this weekend in Dublin when ESPN was having game day there, he said it was all about the trenches. The reason they lost to Georgia and Alabama last year was because of the trenches. Well, Lane Kiffin has shored up the trenches. And Jackson Dart is another year older, and he is phenomenal.
He is.
So as long as they don't get their asses kicked up front, I think Ole Miss has a chance to win the SEC, but I have them making the playoffs. So those are my teams: Oregon, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma State, Texas, Ohio State, Utah, Ole Miss, A&M, Miami, USC, and Liberty.
I'm not going to put mine in any particular order. That looks like you spent days trying to figure that out.
I've listened to a lot of previews.
Well, I did not, because I know how this is going to go anyway. I'm going to go Georgia, Ohio State, Miami. It pains me to take Utah. I'm just going to get on the Utah train, even though I don't want to, by any means.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I'm going to go with Texas Tech.
Texas Tech out of the Big 12?
Yeah, let's do that. Alabama, Oregon, Mississippi, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Clemson.
So Ole Miss, not Mississippi State, right?
Mississippi, right.
Ole Miss
is,
got it.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, not Mississippi State. Sorry, Jordan Westberg. Let's see. Clemson, Penn State, Texas A&M, and UTSA.
UTSA.
Why not? I gotta eat here. I gotta live here. I gotta work here.
We got a homer list.
And I thought about Texas State too because I really believe in GJ and what he's doing. Ultimately, it comes down to my belief that UTSA's roster is just ridiculously deep.
It is. They have depth at every level. And especially with the addition of Denver Harris as well, I think their corners and their DBs take a big step. So that's our list.
I think so too. A lot of people are maybe not giving them enough credit and thinking that their DB room's going to be a little light this year. I don't think so, man.
One thing
chance.
One thing is for sure, Chuck. It's the best time of year.
It truly is because you know why? September is a great time of year too, and October because baseball overlaps too.
Yeah, but the Astros are losing ground right now.
They're still hanging in there, and somebody's got to win that division.
All right, those are our predictions. Is there anything else in the chat there, Chuck?
David Garcia says, don't mention Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson. He also says he has respect for USC, and he laughs at Miami.
I know. Mario Cristobal makes me laugh, too.
Well, right, we were talking about that in Miami. It's like, how do you trust any Florida schools, right?
Yeah.
When there's beaches and girls and 19-year-old, 20-year-old guys.
Yeah, I mean, Miami.
It's just hard to trust them.
Or when you can't take a knee against Georgia Tech and you end up losing when you have the game in hand.
That was so
Michigan
historical.
going to be eligible by the end of the season?
Michigan will be bowl eligible. I don't think they'll be eligible to make the playoff. I mean, I don't know. I'm not very high on Michigan this year. But
I just think they're ready to get smacked so hard, right?
What? By
There'll be
sanctions?
a lot of teams ready to tee off on them.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's what we got this year. My bold prediction is that Alabama will not make the college football playoff.
Love it.
And
We'll see. I love Kalen DeBoer, but we'll see.
As a matter of historical reference, if you are gaming on anything that was said out of my pie hole, go the opposite. You'll be just fine.
Hey, you can take what I said. It's cemented. It's written in stone. I'm right all the time, obviously. So that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you on Monday for the first week of NFL football. Don will be back. We'll see you then.